Hey everyone, welcome to another video in this series about creating a chat app in Flutter the right way. And in this video, we'll be looking at handling states for our different services. So we'll be looking at states management using the BLOC library. And with that, we'll go straight into our code. And first, we'll go into our pubspec YAML file and to ensure that our BLOC library or package is installed. So I'll go ahead to my pubspec assist and I'll get the BLOC library. Then I'll save that to get everything up and running. I also want to add to my list of libraries the equatable package. So I'll go and get equatable. Now I'll add that also. And I'll save to install all those packages. So now that we have our packages installed and ready, we'll go ahead into our lib folder, and now where we have our folders, we are going to create another folder, and I'm just gonna call it states management. And inside here, the first state management that I want to set up is for our message service. So I'm gonna create another folder called message, and in here I'm gonna just go ahead and create 3 files. So I'm gonna create the message block file, I'll create the message event, and then the message state. And I'm gonna start with the state file, and first I'll create a abstract class and I'll call it message state, and this I want to extend equatable here. Then for my message state, I want to configure 3 states. So I'm just going to create a class for each state. I'll create the initial state, which basically is nothing, and this will extend message state. And I'll create inside my abstract class here the override for the equatable props method. So I'll go ahead and create that. This will be a override. So I'll make that an override. And now that error with our message state is no longer there. So I'll go ahead also and I'll create a message sent success state. This will extend message state. And for my message send, I want to have a message which is the message that was sent, and I'll create my constant constructor here, message sent success message. and I'll go ahead and create that props property. First, I'll create the constructor here for my message state, again, to get rid of that error. And I'll just override the props property here to return the message. So that's my message sent state. Now I'll copy this and I'll call this my message received success state. Again, this needs a message, this needs the constructor here, and that's my message received state. So those are my 3 states for my message that will be associated with my message block. So now I'll go ahead and create the set of events that will be associated with my message block. So again, I'll create my abstract class and I'll call it message event, and this will extend equatable. I'll create my constant message constructor here, my message event constructor, and also my props override here. So for my events, I want first a subscribed event. This will fire whenever the client subscribe to receive messages, and this will accept a user, that is the user that is subscribing to these messages. So here's my user. Then I'll create my constructor and I'll say that is my user, and again override the props to return that user object. So that is my subscribe event class. Then I'll have my message sent event. Again, we need our message, that is the message that was sent, final message. Call this message, and we'll just add that to our message sent constructor and override the props to return that message. There we have our message sent event. Next we'll have our message receive event, and I'm going to make this into a private class since this event will only be called by the block itself and is not necessary for the client to access. message sent. I know that I'm gonna send a message, so I'll put that in the constructor and I'll go ahead set up my message here. And also my props. So there we have our events, and I'm just gonna go inside of my message event abstract class, and I'm gonna create a couple of factory methods that will return the correct event. So here I'm gonna say factory message event unsubscribed. This method will accept a user and will create a subscribed event passing that user. Also, I'm gonna create a factory method for the message received, so on the message sent, rather on message sent, and this will accept a message and will return a message sent event. So now we have our event factory set up, and I want to go back to my state and have those factory methods set up also. So for my state, I want to say message state, and I'm gonna say initial. That will return a message initial state. I also want my sent, and this will accept a message, will return the message sent success state. Then I want the message state, rather, received. This will accept the message and will create a message received success state. So those are my factory methods for creating the different states. And now I can just go ahead and configure my block. So to configure my block, I'm just gonna say class message block, and this message block will extend block, and this block will be of type message event and message state. Let's go ahead and just import the block from the library, and we'll override the missing map event method. So now for this message block, I want to inject my message service, so I'm just gonna say for its dependency message service, and I'm gonna set up also a stream subscription, and inside my constructor message block I'll accept the message service, and I'll create the initial state whenever the block is initialized. So I'll say message state initial. So now inside of my map events method, and this method is used to map all the events that will be sent to this block. I'm just gonna check for the various events that will be passed in and map those events to the appropriate state. So I'm just gonna say if the event is a subscribed event, then what I want to do is to set up the subscription. First, I want to cancel that subscription if there's any subscription active. So my subscription variable cancel. This should be async star. So cancel whatever subscription that might exist at the time of configuring this block. Then I'll create a new subscription using my message service. So I'll go ahead, message service, then I'm gonna subscribe to the messages stream, and for the active user I'm gonna get the user from the event, since the subscribe event should have the user. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say listen, and then here I'm gonna listen to receive messages, or listen to receive different messages that are being passed through. And whenever a message comes through, I'm gonna go ahead and add that message to the message receive state. So I'm gonna create a new state, and I'm just gonna pass in that message. So this should be my message receive event. But this event is not available here. So I will have to go ahead inside my message event and say part of, and I'll have to give it the message block. So I've gone ahead and fixed the error. So inside of our message event, we'll have to include the part of message block that dart. file and remove all the imports, and those imports will be moved to the main block file here. And we'll also use part message event message state, and inside of our message state we'll need part of also. So this is a part of message block, message event is a part of message block, and inside of our message block we have both message event and message states, and it will basically fetch all the imports that are inside the message block and have them available inside the state and the event. And that is why you see there are no imports here. So now inside of our message block we can see our subscription listen is now working as it should. So we listen for a message, and then whenever we receive a message we add it using this built-in block method to add an event, and this will add an event to the event sync, and we'll add a message received event, and we'll pass in the message that was received. And now we can check for our remaining events. So we can say whenever the event is message received, so whenever we get a message received event, we can go ahead and yield the appropriate state. In this case we'll yield the message receive state. So I'll use the factory method state received and go ahead and fetch the message from the event itself. And final event, it will say if event is message sent. So if it is a message sent event, or we can say message event if it's right. So we're checking if it is a message sent event here, then we'll go ahead and say await message service. We'll use our message service to send the message, and again we'll get that event, or the message rather, from the event, and we'll go ahead and yield a message sent state, and again we'll pass in the message that was sent into our state. So those are the three events that we're handling inside of our message block. And now I'm just gonna override the close method so that whenever this block closes, I want to close the subscription or cancel the subscription, and I also want to dispose of the message service so we do not have memory leaks. So there we have our message block ready to receive messages unsubscribed with a particular user and ready to send messages for that user. So now that we have our message block set up, we can go ahead and write tests for those. So inside of our test, I'm going to create a folder, and I'm just going to call the folder states, and I'm just going to say message block tests. So now I'm testing my message block, so I'll set that up as my system under test. It will use my iMessage service, and also a user. Go ahead, create a setup method. Just gonna say message service is equal to, I'm gonna use a fake message service that I will create using the Mockito library. I will create a user. So this is my user. Username test. Photo URL, I'm just gonna make that empty. Active true, last seen, date time now. So that is my user, and then for my SUT, just gonna say message block and pass in the message service. So I'm just gonna use Mockito here to create a fake message service. So I'm just gonna say class fake message service. This will extend mock and implement my iMessage service. So there's my fake message service. So now for my test, first I'm just going to create the teardown method so that it closes the block whenever the test finishes. So now for my first test, I want to ensure that it emits the initial state only when there is no subscription. So I'm going to say only without subscriptions. So I'm just going to say the first expectation is that the SUT state should be message initial, so that when the block is configured, the only state emitted is the initial state. So if I go ahead and run that, we can see our test is passing. So I'm going to write the other test and then explain those. So here I have written the other tests and to ensure that they are working. So the first test is we are testing that it is emitting the send state whenever we send a message. So here I created a message, then I configure my mock message service object to say that whenever the send method is called with that said message, then return true. And then I say my SUT, which is my message block, I want to add the on message sent event passing that message, and I'm using expect later since I'm working with asynchronous methods. So it will wait for the stream to complete, then I'm checking that the stream emits message state sent with the same message. So I'm expecting that it will emit a message sent state, and that is working as it should. And for the other test, similarly, I am expecting that we should receive a message whenever a message comes from the server, so that it should emit a message receive state. So again, here I've created a message and I've configured the messages service. I've configured the messages method, which returns a stream, so that it will return here a stream from iterable. So it return a stream from this array of messages, so that whenever I say SUT and I add the message event on subscribe, so now I'm subscribed to the stream to receive message, then I'm expecting that it should emit a message received success message. And that's exactly what is happening, so that when we run all these tests, they are passing as they should. And there we have it. So now we have configured our message block to perform all the tasks that we wanted to in terms of sending and receiving messages and emitting the appropriate states. And we are going to do the same thing for our receipt and our typing notification. So now I'll go back to states management and I'll create another folder called receipt. Then what I'm going to do is copy these 3 files and I'm just gonna paste them here, and I'm gonna rename each of them. So if I rename this one to, instead of message, I'm just gonna rename it receipt. And let me rename this one also and let me rename this from message block to receipt block. So now for our receipt state, it's basically the same thing as the message, sending and receiving receipts. I'll just refactor so that it says receipt instead of messages. So wherever I see message state, I'll go ahead and refactor those to say receipt state. Then I'll refactor messages initial to say receipt initial. I'm going to refactor message success. Just gonna refactor that to say receipt sent success, and I'll refactor the same with my message received. Factor to say receipt received. Then just go ahead, change message rather to receipt. And here change to receipt. And there we have our receipt state. As for the events, it is pretty similar. It's just refactoring all these events to say receipt event instead of message event. So I'm just gonna go ahead and refactor this quickly. So I've gone ahead and refactor this class, this event class, to have receipt event instead of messages. And again, it's the same thing as the message event class, but instead of message event, it's handling receipts and dealing with receipts. So we have receipt sent, and we have receipt received, and we have the subscribe event to receive those receipts. So now we can go to our block and we can refactor this block. So again, change from message block to receipt block. Then we have here, instead of message event, we are going to accept receipt events. And again, instead of message state, just gonna refactor where message state is. We are going to change that to receipt state. And now here, instead of message received, we say receipt received. So now it's a matter of changing the dependency. So instead of message service, we're going to say receipt service. Then instead of messages here, this will be receipts. And I think here we need just the user without the named parameter. Now we accept, instead of messages, we refactor all those messages to say receipt. And there we have our receipt block, just by copying and refactoring our message block. Now the tests for these are pretty similar, so you can go ahead, you can copy and paste the message block test, create your own receipt block test, and refactor as necessary and get that up and running. I am not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to create those tests, but you guys can create them. You guys should create them to ensure that everything is working as it should. It's a matter of copying this message block test, refactoring that, and ensuring that everything is working as it should. So now I am also gonna create our typing notification. So I'm just gonna create a new folder, call it typing. I am going to again copy these 3 files. I'm gonna paste them here, and I'm gonna rename each one to say typing notification. Then our block typing notification. So we'll start by refactoring our states. It is the same thing as before, where I'll refactor all these class names to say typing notification state. And as you can see, I have the initial here spelled wrong, so you can correct that in your code base. I'll rename this to typing notification initial. Go ahead, rename this to again typing notification sent. Then we'll rename our received to typing notification received. So now we'll have to just refactor wherever we see receipt. We'll refactor those to say typing event. Here inside of my typing notification sent, I'm gonna remove the need for the variable here. And I'll remove this since I do not need a state whenever I send a typing notification, so that can be removed. Then for the receipts, I need to change those to typing events. As you can see, we do not have access to our typing event class, so let us see what's the cause of that. So the issue is that we have not exported our typing notification model. So if we go here to our chat folder and inside of lib, inside of our chat Dart file, then we need to go ahead and export package chat source models typing event. So we need to go ahead and export that. So now our typing event is present, and I'm just gonna rename these receipts just gonna rename these event. Then this one here should be typing event. So that is our typing notification state class. So we refactor that. Let's go ahead and refactor the event class. So I'll quickly go ahead and refactor this and explain what changes we have done. Change this to typing notification event. Let me go ahead and finish this refactor quickly, then explain what we have done. So I have gone ahead and done the refactor for typing notification event. And as you can see, we still have our unsubscribed method with an additional parameter here, which is a list of those users' IDs that we have existing chats with, so that we are not receiving events from random individuals that we have no existing chat with. So that's for our subscribe event. We have an additional variable that is optional, so that we know when the user subscribes for the first time, this variable might not be present, and in that case it will be empty. And for that situation, we have the not subscribed event, so that when the user subscribed but there are no current chats to receive typing notification for, instead of actually subscribing to receive those events, we'll throw a not subscribed event, which will in return the initial state, and we'll see that in the block. So the only addition here is this, an additional event, not subscribe event, and an additional variable to our subscribe for those list of users that we have existing chats with, but everything is the same as our receipt. And inside of our block here, we will go ahead and refactor our block. So again, we'll say, instead of receipt block, we'll say typing notification block. This will receive the typing notification event and also the state itself. Instead of receipt state, we have the typing notification state. So now for our service, instead of a receipt service, we have our notification service here, and we'll go ahead and call that typing notification. So inside of our map event to state method, whenever the event is subscribed, what I want to do is first check if, and I'm gonna instead of event here, I'm gonna change this to typing event here. So, and this is because I've already named the events in each event type here. I've named the typing event variable event, so it's confusing saying event.event. So you can name your variables more meaningful. I think there can be proper naming in this context, but for now I'm just gonna say if the event here users with chat, if that is null, what I want to do is to not subscribe to the notification service to receive messages from the server, but what I want to do is to say add a not subscribed event here and then return. In this case, we are saving memory and processing resources by not subscribing to receive events when there are no possibility of us receiving events here. So in the case now where we have existing chats, we can go ahead and subscribe. So typing notification subscribe, and we'll pass in the user, so typing event user, and also the list of users, so typing users with chat. We go ahead, listen here for events receiving. Just gonna say type in event again, and here we can add that event to typing notification received. Pass that there. So now we can check if a typing event is typing notification received, then we yield the receive state, and event we get the typing event. In the other case, if it is a sent, if the typing event is typing notification sent, then we are just gonna go ahead and send that event. So here, and we'll say typing event dot event, then we'll yield this sent state, and we'll also say if the event receive is a not subscribed event, then we'll yield the typing notification initial state. Typing notification state dot initial. So that way, when the user is not subscribed, we just return the initial state for the client to handle that. So that is our block for typing notification. So in this video, we have configured our message block, we have configured our receipt block, and we have configured our typing notification block. The three most important states management blocks or blocks for our system so far. So in the next video, we'll be looking at starting to create our UI and theming our UI based on the dark theme or the light theme mode. But for now, we'll stop here. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for waiting for these videos. It takes some time to make since I want to do it as best as possible for you guys to learn how to go about doing things production ready, and not just simply creating some Flutter UI, but to learn principles and ideas that can help us all grow as developers. So thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next video. And remember, the code is on GitHub for you to check out. See you in the next one.